The elevator doors sighed open onto the 18th floor, and Zuri Harris stepped into the kind of office that tried very hard to look more important than it was. Frosted glass with the company name, Kincaid and Company. Brand acceleration. Ferns that were always dying a little. A Keurig that gurgled like it had secrets. She tugged down her blazer sleeve, smoothed the wrinkles she couldn't see, and reminded herself, today is paycheck day. 2 weeks of answering phones, building spreadsheets no one read, and fixing decks her boss broke by insisting on 6 fonts. 2 weeks of "you're so articulate" said like surprise, of being asked to fetch coffee for men who swiveled their chairs away when she spoke. 2 weeks at $15 an hour, logged in a neat Excel file saved on her cloud and in a printed copy inside her tote bag, just in case the universe forgot she existed. "Morning, Zuri," Priya called from the design pod, lowering her voice as she approached. "You good?" Zuri nodded. "Good enough." Her phone showed the date circled in pink, payday. She had promised her mom she'd help with the light bill and buy Isaiah new cleats. Her little brother had worn holes through the toe from practicing corner kicks in their tiny backyard, and she had teased him that he was auditioning for Flintstones FC. He deserved new ones. She deserved her check. The door to the corner office was already ajar. Dale Kincaid loved being early when it meant other people had to be. He also loved reminding the interns that, in this industry, hunger wins. For the past 2 weeks, he'd said it like a mantra, like he'd invented the concept of ambition and everyone else owed him interest. Zuri knocked lightly and stepped in. Kincaid glanced up, that quick scan people did when they were deciding whether to be decent today. "Zuri, right?" He always said her name like he was testing it for flaws. "Busy morning, what do you need?" "My check," she said, keeping her voice even. "You said payroll runs on Fridays. Today's Friday." Kincaid leaned back, fingers lacing behind his head, the watch he liked to flash catching the overhead light. "About that. We consider the first 2 weeks a probationary training period. For interns, it's unpaid." Her ears rang. "Sir, my offer letter says hourly. I signed the acceptance. We agreed on $15. He cut her off with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Aspirational conversation. You're lucky to be here, getting exposure. We're investing in you. Most people would kill for this experience." "Most people," Zuri repeated, the words tasting like metal. "Is there a written policy? Because the letter—" "Come on," he said, exhaling like she'd tested his patience by reading. "Don't be difficult. People like you usually understand hustle." There it was. Not a slur, not something she could quote on a poster, just a polished stone of contempt lobbed in her direction, expecting her to swallow it. People like you. She thought of her mother's hands counting tips at the end of a double shift, of Isaiah's cleats, of how hard she'd worked just to stand in this room without apologizing for existing. She forced a breath through her nose. "I logged 108 hours. I have timesheets, and the state poster in the break room says—" "The poster," he chuckled. "Love when the kids get legal on me. Listen, sweetheart." "Please don't call me that." His smile flattened. "Listen, you want to make it in this business? You learn not to nickel and dime the people who open doors for you." Zuri swallowed. "I opened the door for myself." Kincaid's jaw twitched. The room felt smaller. Through the glass wall, Zuri caught Luis in ET, watching, concern tightened between his brows. Priya stood near the printers, eyes flicking from Zuri to Kincaid and back again, the way people watch a storm they hope will pass without breaking anything. "I'll need your badge," Kincaid said, voice suddenly bland. "If you're not a culture fit, we can reconsider your place here." "My place is at the front desk," Zuri said, calmer than she felt, "and my check is 2 weeks late." "Badge," he repeated, hand outstretched. "Let's not make a scene." Zuri didn't move. She thought of the hotline number printed on the labor law poster by the microwave, the one she'd read twice on her first day because something in her bones told her to. She thought of the offer letter, the onboarding email that said "Welcome to the team," the Slack message where Kincaid himself had typed $15 hour confirmed. She'd saved screenshots to her personal drive. She'd labeled the folder receipts because sometimes the only thing standing between you and erasure was proof you'd been there at all. "I'm going to step out," she said quietly. "We can talk later." "You'll leave your badge on my desk, Zuri." She looked at his hand. Soft, manicured, waiting to take something that didn't belong to him. Then she looked at his eyes, which had already moved past her to the next crisis he believed only he could solve. No, she said and walked out. At the front desk, she sat very still. Her heart was doing a drumline. Priya appeared with a paper cup of water and set it down without a word. Luis rolled over on his chair and said under his breath, "I've got the email. He CC'd me on your start rate if you need it." Zuri nodded once. "Thank you." She opened her notes app and wrote a timeline. Offer accepted, $15 HR. Start date, hours logged. Slack confirmation. Today, refusal to pay. Demand to return badge. People like you. She attached photos of the posted wage notice, the hotline number, her timesheets. She wrote her mom. "You up?" The 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Always. "How's payday?" He said probationary. "No pay. Wants my badge." "I have everything saved." There was a pause, then, "Call the number on that poster, baby. Or the city. Tell them you fear retaliation. Say you have proof. If he thinks he can get away with it, he's done it before." Zuri stared at the digits she'd memorized but never thought she'd dial. Her throat felt tight. Her thumb hovered, then pressed. A woman answered, voice brisk but kind. "State labor standards. How can I help?" Zuri gave her name. She kept it factual. She read from the timeline. When she reached "people like you," her voice threatened to crack, so she said it the way you say something you're not going to let break you. The woman asked questions. Zuri answered. "Do you have documentation?" "Yes." "Could we come by today?" Zuri blinked. "Today?" The woman's keyboard clattered. "We're 2 blocks away for a scheduled audit. If you're reporting active non-payment and potential retaliation, we can prioritize." Zuri looked up. Kincaid was in his glass box gesturing at a screen, laughing too loud. Priya gave Zuri a tiny, steady nod. Luis whispered, "You okay?" She wasn't sure, but she said, "Yes." "Stay where you are," the woman said. "If anyone asks you to leave or surrender property, note the exact words. We'll be there shortly." When the call ended, the air felt different, like someone had cracked a window she hadn't known was painted shut. Zuri placed her phone face down and sipped the water Priya had brought. Somewhere on the floor above, a printer jammed and someone cursed. The Keurig gurgled. Life continued being ordinary, which felt obscene. 5 minutes later, the elevator dinged. 2 people in navy blazers stepped out. Badges on lanyards, clipboards tucked under arms. They moved with the unhurried confidence of people who aren't here to ask. The woman from the phone found Zuri's eyes instantly, and Zuri felt her shoulders lower for the first time all morning. "Good morning," the woman said, voice carrying just enough. "We're with state labor standards. We're here to see Mr. Kincaid, and we'll need immediate access to payroll records, timekeeping systems, and all intern offer letters." Several heads popped up above cubicle walls. An account manager choked on his LaCroix. Priya didn't smile, but her eyes shone. Luis spun his chair one slow, satisfied degree toward the corner office. In the glass box, Dale Kincaid looked up at the badges, then at Zuri. She met his gaze without blinking. For the first time since she'd walked into this building, it was very clear whose hands were empty. The moment the 2 labor inspectors crossed the threshold, the atmosphere in the office shifted. The usual clatter of keyboards slowed to a nervous hum. Conversations died mid-sentence. It wasn't every day that the state walked in with clipboards and badges. Zuri sat at the front desk, hands clasped tightly, pretending to scroll through her phone while her heart thumped like a bass drum. She wanted to disappear, but she also wanted to watch every second. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every intern who had left with empty hands, convinced they didn't deserve better. "Mr. Kincaid?" the woman inspector called, her tone polite but firm. Through the glass walls of his corner office, Dale Kincaid's expression flickered. First surprise, then irritation, then a pasted-on smile. He strode out, his voice carrying that forced joviality he reserved for clients. "Good morning. What can I do for you folks?" The male inspector held up his badge. "State labor standards. We've received a complaint regarding unpaid wages and potential retaliation. We'll need access to your payroll records, intern contracts, and any communication regarding compensation." A ripple passed through the office like a wind gust. Priya's eyes widened. Luis leaned back in his chair, lips pressed tight to keep from grinning. Kincaid laughed, a brittle sound. "A complaint? That's ridiculous. We're a reputable firm. Our interns get valuable experience and—" The woman cut him off gently. "Sir, save it for the report. We're here to collect documents. Please cooperate. Kincaid's charm faltered. His jaw tightened. Fine. Follow me. He gestured stiffly toward his office. We'll clear this up in 10 minutes. The inspectors followed, but the woman lingered for a moment at Zuri's desk. Ms. Harris? Zuri's throat went dry. She nodded. Thank you for your call. We'll keep you updated. If anyone pressures you in the meantime, note the details. Her voice softened. You did the right thing. Zuri exhaled slowly. Thank you. When the woman disappeared into Kincaid's office, Priya walked over and placed a hand on Zuri's shoulder. Girl, you just started a revolution. Zuri let out a shaky laugh. Or a fire. Sometimes same thing, Priya whispered, eyes gleaming. Inside the glass office, voices rose and fell. Kincaid gestured wildly at his computer. The inspectors remained calm, their pens scratching across forms. Every now and then, the male inspector leaned closer to the screen, pointing at something that made Kincaid redden. 20 minutes passed, then 30. The office buzzed with speculation. Someone whispered, "He's done this before. My cousin interned here last summer, never got paid." Another muttered, "Remember Jenna? She left after 2 weeks, said she couldn't afford to work for free." Zuri listened silently, each story confirming what she had suspected. She wasn't the first, just the first who refused to vanish quietly. Finally, the inspectors emerged, their clipboards fuller, their expressions unchanged. Kincaid followed, his face slick with forced composure. "We'll be conducting a formal audit of this company's payroll practices," the woman announced to the office. "We'll also be interviewing current and former interns. If any of you would like to provide statements, we'll be here for the next hour." A murmur spread. Several interns exchanged glances, then nodded subtly. Kincaid barked, "Everyone back to work. This is an interruption, nothing more." But the inspectors ignored him. The woman approached a group of interns, lowering her voice, and one by one they began to step aside to talk. Zuri's pulse raced as she watched. She thought of Isaiah's cleats, her mom's light bill, the exhaustion of carrying proof in silence. And then she saw Priya stand, chin high, and walk toward the inspectors. Luis followed. One by one, more interns rose. Kincaid's face darkened. "What do you think you're doing?" he snapped. Priya didn't flinch. "Telling the truth?" The words hung in the air, electric. For the next hour, the office became a confessional. Interns and junior staff shared stories. Unpaid overtime, vanished checks, vague promises that never materialized. The inspectors wrote quickly, nodding, asking precise questions. Zuri gave her statement last, handing over her timesheets, Slack screenshots, and the offer letter. The woman inspector looked her in the eye. "This is thorough, it'll help us a lot." Zuri felt a surge of something she hadn't felt since walking into Kincaid's office that morning. Power. Not loud, not flashy, just the quiet certainty that truth had weight. By late afternoon, the inspectors packed their folders. "Mr. Kincaid," the man said flatly, "we'll be in touch. In the meantime, you are required to provide payment to all interns within 10 business days. Failure to comply will escalate this case to enforcement." Kincaid sputtered, "This is harassment." The woman adjusted her lanyard calmly. "This is the law." With that, they left. The elevator doors closed behind them with a satisfying ding. The office sat in stunned silence. Then Luis clapped slowly, sarcastically. Priya joined, louder. Soon others followed, their applause filling the sterile air with something like defiance. Kincaid stormed back into his office and slammed the door. The blinds snapped shut. Zuri sat back at her desk, her heart still racing but her spirit lighter. She texted her mom. "Inspectors came, whole office saw, he's in trouble." Her mom's reply came quick. "That's my girl, your daddy would be proud. Isaiah too." Zuri closed her eyes, letting the words steady her. For the first time, she believed them. That evening, as the sun dipped over the city, Zuri walked out of the building with Priya and Luis. The air felt fresher, like the whole block had been scrubbed clean. Priya grinned. "Drinks on me, you earned it." Zuri laughed, real laughter this time. "No, I think Dale's money will be buying the next round." They all cracked up, the sound carrying down the street. For the first time since she'd started at Kincaid & Coney, Zuri didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, heard, counted. And as she headed home, she thought, this is just the beginning. Monday morning dawned gray, the kind of sky that warned of rain but held off just to keep people uneasy. Zuri entered the lobby of Kincaid and Company with her head higher than usual. She hadn't planned it. Her chin simply refused to drop. She had spent the weekend replaying Friday in her mind. The inspector's calm authority, the interns rising one by one, the applause that filled the sterile air like thunder. For once, the silence had belonged to Dale Kincaid, but the office she stepped into was different. The usual low chatter was muted, keyboards tapping with unusual caution. Everyone was watching, waiting. The blinds in Kincaid's glass office were drawn, hiding his expression but not his presence. His shadow paced occasionally, a silhouette of frustration. Priya leaned across her desk as Zuri passed. "You've started something," she whispered. "Started or ended?" Zuri muttered, setting her bag down. Luis rolled over on his chair, grinning. "Both." He lowered his voice. He spent all weekend sending frantic emails. HR, legal, even his country club buddy who thinks he knows labor law. Guess what? None of them can magic away timesheets. Zuri smiled faintly. Good. By noon, Kincaid finally emerged. His usual swagger was thinner, like a suit that didn't fit anymore. He clapped his hands once, too loud. "All right, team, let's clear the air." The office froze. Even the Keurig seemed to quiet. "There's been some misunderstanding with payroll, a clerical error. No one's withholding anything. We're correcting it and everyone will be compensated." His voice was smooth, rehearsed, but his eyes darted too quickly. "So let's focus on what matters. Our work, our clients, our future." He scanned the room, waiting for nods. None came. Priya stared at her screen. Luis folded his arms. The interns kept their eyes steady, unblinking. Zuri sat still at the front desk, heart thudding but face calm. She could feel his gaze pause on her, searching for compliance. She didn't give it. "Good talk," Kincaid said briskly, retreating to his office. As soon as the door shut, the whispers began. "Clerical error?" One intern scoffed. "My cousin said the same thing last summer." Another muttered, "So if we hadn't spoken up, we'd still be unpaid?" Zuri typed quietly into her notes app. Clerical error claim. Noon meeting. Everyone present. Observed silence. Disbelief. Documentation had become second nature, her shield and her sword. The afternoon dragged. Emails pinged, but most were about the audit. Inspectors had already requested additional documents. HR circulated a vague memo. "We are committed to compliance and transparency." No one believed it. At 3, Luis wheeled over. "You know what's wild? He doesn't get it. He still thinks this is about you being stubborn. He doesn't see the whole office is done with him." Zuri shrugged. "Maybe he doesn't want to see." Priya joined them, her voice low. "I heard 2 associates talking. Clients are asking questions. News travels fast. One bad audit and he's toxic." The thought stunned Zuri. She had been fighting for her own paycheck, her own dignity. She hadn't considered that the cracks could spread all the way to the company's glossy facade. At Bainimaiv, Zuri gathered her things. She stepped into the elevator, shoulders heavy but steady. Just before the doors closed, Priya slipped in beside her. "You okay?" she asked. Zuri exhaled. "Honestly, no, I'm scared. What if he finds a way to retaliate? What if I get blacklisted?" Priya looked her straight in the eye. "Listen, he tried to erase you and you said no. That's not weakness, it's strength. And if this industry can't handle people telling the truth, then it's not worth being in." Zuri blinked, surprised at the fierceness in her friend's voice. "You're not alone anymore," Priya added, squeezing her hand. The elevator doors slid open, spilling them into the lobby. That night, Zuri sat at her kitchen table with her mom. Isaiah had fallen asleep on the couch, one cleat dangling from his foot where he'd practiced in the living room until exhaustion claimed him. "You did right," her mom said, sipping tea. "I worked 20 years waiting tables. You know how many checks came late? How many managers told me, be grateful for the hours? Too many. I never had the courage to fight, but you called." Naomi felt tears prick her eyes. "I was so close to giving him my badge." Her mom shook her head. "Badges don't pay bills. Truth does." They sat in silence, listening to Isaiah's soft snores. For the first time, Zuri felt something stronger than fear rising in her chest. Not triumph, resolve. The next morning, she returned to find an email waiting. Mandatory all-staff meeting. 10 a.m. When the time came, Kincaid stood at the head of the conference table, flanked by two stone-faced HR reps. A stack of envelopes sat in front of him. "We've reviewed payroll records," he announced stiffly. "Effective immediately, all interns will receive back pay. Additionally, stipends will be provided for any overtime hours. This concludes the matter." He began passing the envelopes down the table. Zuri's hand trembled as she opened hers. A check, her check, sat inside. $1,620. Neat and undeniable. Priya caught her eye, mouthing, "Told you." Louise smirked. "Guess clerical errors get fixed quick when the state's watching." Kincaid cleared his throat. "I trust this demonstrates our commitment to fairness." But no one applauded. No one thanked him. The silence was louder than any cheer. Zuri folded the check carefully, slipped it into her bag, and thought, "This isn't over. This is only proof." Because justice wasn't just a number on paper. It was the knowledge that when someone tried to chain the door, she had pushed back, and others had pushed with her. And somewhere deep down, Zuri knew the inspectors would be back. The morning after the checks were distributed, the office buzzed with an energy Zuri had never felt before. People weren't celebrating exactly, but there was a quiet electricity, like something hidden had finally been dragged into the light. Zuri sat at her desk, her check safely deposited, and watched coworkers huddle in small groups. Snippets of conversation floated through the air. "Can you believe he called it a clerical error? My cousin worked here last summer, same story. He's only paying now because the inspectors are circling." The Keurig hissed and sputtered as usual, but this time even the machine seemed to carry a note of disdain. From behind the glass walls of his office, Dale Kincaid watched. His blinds were open again, his posture exaggeratedly relaxed. He picked up the phone, gesturing as if to show the floor how busy and important he was. He laughed too loud, the sound brittle. At 10 sharp, a company-wide email landed in everyone's inbox. Subject: Moving forward. Together team, recent events have highlighted opportunities for growth in our payroll processes. We are committed to transparency and fairness as we continue building Kincaid & Company into the powerhouse it is destined to be. We value each of you and the passion you bring to our shared mission. Remember, our strength lies in unity. Dale Kincaid, CEO. Zuri read it twice, shaking her head. "Opportunities for growth in our payroll processes," she muttered. "That's one way to spin theft." Priya wheeled over, smirking. "Classic Dale. Step 1, deny. Step 2, rebrand. Step 3, pretend the fire was a feature." Luis leaned on Zuri's desk, reading over her shoulder. Translation: "He's terrified the inspectors will be back." Which they will. Zuri folded her arms. "Good." That afternoon, Kincaid convened a team huddle in the main conference room. He stood at the head of the table, projector screen glowing behind him with slides titled Vision 2025. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice oily, "we've faced challenges, but challenges are opportunities. An opportunity is the soil of innovation." Groans rippled quietly around the room. Priya scribbled "bingo" on a sticky note and slid it to Zuri. Soil of innovation equals a new catchphrase. Kincaid clicked through slides of charts with upward arrows that meant nothing. "Our clients trust us, our brand is strong, and now we must rebuild stronger. That means all of us working harder, smarter, and with total commitment." Zuri raised an eyebrow. Harder? Smarter? After weeks of unpaid hours? She glanced around and saw she wasn't alone. Eyes rolled, arms crossed. Respect had drained out of the room like air from a punctured balloon. When Kincaid wrapped up, he forced applause with a clap of his own. A few joined politely. Most didn't. Afterward, Priya and Zuri escaped to the break room. "He's scrambling," Priya whispered. "First the inspectors, now this pep rally. He's desperate to control the story." Zuri sipped her water, steady. "He doesn't control it anymore. We do." By midweek, whispers spread that 2 major clients had postponed meetings, citing concerns about stability. A recruiter reached out to one of the associates with offers elsewhere. For the first time, cracks were visible in the facade Dale had spent years polishing. Zuri documented everything in her growing folder, the emails, the memos, the hollow speeches, not because she planned to use them, but because she understood now. Proof mattered. Receipts mattered. Silence had never protected anyone but the abuser. On Thursday, the inspectors returned. Their appearance was quieter this time, no dramatic entrance, no raised voices, but their presence filled the office with tension. They went straight into the conference room with HR and closed the door. Zuri tried to focus on her screen, but her pulse quickened. Every so often, someone walked past with files, eyes wide. Priya texted her from across the room, "He's sweating." 2 hours later, the inspectors emerged. Kincaid followed, pale but smiling weakly. "Routine follow-up," he told the office, voice cracking. "All fine." No one believed him. That evening, as Zuri packed up, Louise stopped her. "Hey, word is they found records of other unpaid interns going back 3 years. This isn't just about us." Zuri's stomach twisted. "How many?" "Dozens, maybe more. Some already filed statements. If this goes public, Dale's finished." Zuri stepped into the elevator, her reflection in the mirrored wall catching her by surprise. She looked taller somehow. Not because the world had changed, but because she had refused to shrink. At home, Isaiah ran to greet her, waving his new cleats. "Look, Zuri, they fit perfect." She knelt, hugging him tight. For a moment, the office melted away. "You'll score so many goals in those," she whispered. Her mom, watching from the kitchen, smiled knowingly. "You fought for those shoes," she said. Zuri looked at her family, the light bill paid, Isaiah's laughter ringing, and felt a quiet strength settle in her chest. This fight wasn't over, but she was ready. By Friday morning, the atmosphere at Kincaid & Company had shifted from tense to openly mutinous. The buzz of whispers wasn't fear anymore. It was strategy. Interns compared notes in the break room. Associates whispered about recruiters calling. Even some managers spoke more openly, no longer afraid of the man in the corner office. Zuri noticed it as soon as she stepped in. Priya waved her over, her eyes alive. "Guess what? One of our biggest clients canceled their retainer, said they don't want to be associated with ongoing investigations." Luis wheeled his chair closer, lowering his voice dramatically. "And rumor is, HR got a subpoena yesterday. Payroll records for 3 years. That means the inspectors aren't playing around anymore." Zuri's stomach fluttered, not with fear, but with something like justice tightening its grip. 3 years, she whispered. "That's not just me. That's every intern who walked away with nothing." Priya nodded, her tone fierce. "And now they're all coming back." At 10, Kincaid stormed out of his office, jaw clenched, tie askew. "All hands meeting," he barked. "Conference room, now." The staff filed in reluctantly, mutters trailing behind them. Zuri sat near the back with Priya and Luis. She pulled out her notebook automatically, already documenting. Kincaid stood at the head of the table, slamming his palms against the glossy wood. "I don't know what stories are flying around, but let me make this clear. Kincaid & Company is not going anywhere. These inspectors, they don't understand how business works. They're trying to tear down everything we've built." Luis muttered under his breath, "Everything you stole." Kincaid's face reddened. "If anyone here has complaints, you bring them to me, not outsiders. Airing dirty laundry only hurts us all." His eyes flicked across the room, daring someone to meet his gaze. Most avoided it, but Zuri didn't. She sat straight, her expression calm, her pen poised above her notebook. When his glare landed on her, she simply wrote another line. "Accused staff of disloyalty. Warned against outsiders." The silence stretched. Finally, Priya spoke. "With respect, Dale, if you'd paid us in the first place, there'd be no dirty laundry." A ripple of murmurs spread. Someone clapped once, then stopped, but the sound had already landed. Kincaid's lips curled. "Watch yourself." But Priya didn't flinch. "We are." The room erupted in whispers. Kincaid tried to regain control, but the tide had turned. No one feared him anymore, so after the meeting, the office buzzed louder than ever. People gathered at Zuri's desk, asking about the inspectors, offering to provide statements. One intern, a nervous freshman named Alina, whispered, "I thought I was the only one. I didn't know we could fight back." Zuri gave her a steady smile. "You're not alone. None of us are." For the first time, she felt like a leader, not because she wanted to be, but because others had chosen her as one. That afternoon, another email hit inboxes. This one from the inspectors themselves. Subject: Employee rights reminder. If you have experienced wage theft, retaliation, or other violations, you have the right to confidentially provide information to our office. Retaliation for cooperating with a state investigation is illegal. Please reach out using the hotline below. The message landed like a bomb. Within minutes, people were on their phones whispering, taking notes. Kincaid slammed his office door, blinds snapping shut again. His shadow paced frantically. At home that night, Zuri sat with her mom at the kitchen table, Isaiah doodling soccer plays nearby. "Feels like the walls are closing in on him," Zuri said softly. Her mom smiled. "That's what happens when you build walls out of lies. Eventually, truth kicks them down." Isaiah looked up, wide-eyed. "Like a red card, right? If you cheat, the ref makes you leave." Zuri laughed, ruffling his hair. "Exactly, champ. This is the red card." The following Monday, the inspectors returned again, this time with more authority. They went directly into Kincaid's office, escorted by HR. An hour later, HR circulated another memo. Effective immediately, Dale Kincaid is placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The office exploded. Priya high-fived Luis. Alina whispered, "Is this real?" Zuri read the memo twice, her hands trembling. For weeks she had carried fear and anger in equal measure. Now, for the first time, she felt release. But even in victory, she stayed cautious. She knew this wasn't over. Investigations could drag on. Companies could rebrand, shuffle leadership, bury scandals. But something fundamental had shifted. Silence was broken. Priya leaned across Zuri's desk, grinning ear to ear. "You know what this means? He's out. He doesn't get to hurt us anymore." Luis added, "And he doesn't get to spin it either. The inspectors will publish their findings. People will know." Zuri smiled faintly, but her voice was steady. "Then let's make sure they remember." That evening, walking home, she thought of Isaiah's cleats again, bright, new, solid under his feet. For weeks she had fought just to make sure her work was valued. Now she realized this was bigger than her. It was about every worker who had been told to be grateful for scraps, every voice silenced by fear, every paycheck stolen under the guise of experience. Zuri had lit a spark, and the flames were spreading. With Dale Kincaid on administrative leave, the office felt different the next morning. It wasn't cheerful, too much uncertainty for that, but it was lighter. Like someone had finally opened a window in a room that had been shut for years. The blinds in the corner office stayed closed, its desk empty. HR sent around a polite email. "During this interim period, operations will continue as normal. Please direct any questions to HR." But everyone knew nothing was normal anymore. Zuri arrived to find Priya already at her desk, humming to herself. "Feels weird, doesn't it?" Priya said. "Like the ghost of his cologne still lingers, but the man himself is gone." Luis rolled over, grinning. "Best Monday in years." He pointed at the empty office. "Think we should sage the place?" Zuri chuckled, shaking her head. But deep inside she felt it too. Freedom, tentative but real. The inspectors had promised confidentiality, but everyone knew word would spread. By mid-morning, 2 reporters had called the front desk asking for statements. Zuri deflected them, giving only HR's number, but her pulse quickened. This was leaving the walls of Kincaid & Co. It was about to become public. She opened her notebook and wrote, "This isn't just a complaint anymore. It's history being written." At lunch, a group gathered around the break room table. Usually people ate in silence, eyes glued to screens, but today conversation flowed. Alina, the shy freshman intern, spoke up. "I emailed the inspectors again. I told them about how he made me work 16 hours one weekend for a pitch deck and then said good hustle instead of paying me." Priya patted her hand. "That's brave, Alina. Every story matters." Another intern added, "I told them about the coffee runs. He used to tell us, 'You're lucky I let you buy my latte.'" Laughter rippled, bitter but united. For once they weren't ashamed of the stories. They were sharing them, piecing together a pattern. Zuri listened, her chest tightening with pride. They weren't hiding anymore. That afternoon, HR held a listening session. 2 representatives sat in the conference room, offering free sandwiches as if food could mend years of silence. "We want to hear your concerns," one said earnestly. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Priya raised her hand. "My concern is simple. We were robbed. Weeks, months of unpaid labor. And leadership acted like that was normal. What are you going to do about it?" The HR reps shifted uncomfortably. "We are cooperating fully with the state investigation," one replied, "and we're reviewing company policies." Luis snorted. "Policies weren't the problem. Leadership was." The room murmured in agreement. Zuri watched carefully, noting every word. HR wanted to contain the fire, but it was too late. The spark had spread. When the session ended, Zuri walked out into the hallway with Priya. Do you think they'll actually change anything? She asked. Priya shrugged. Depends on us. If we stay loud, maybe. If we go quiet, they'll bury it. Zuri thought about her folder of receipts, about the hotline number, about the inspector's calm voices. She nodded slowly. Then we won't go quiet. By evening, the news broke online. A local business journal ran the headline. State probes wage theft allegations at prominent marketing firm. The article was blunt. It mentioned unpaid interns, ongoing audits, and anonymous employee statements describing a culture of exploitation. Kincaid's name was in bold print, tied to phrases like under investigation and alleged violations. Zuri's phone buzzed with messages from old classmates and even strangers. Is this your firm? Are you okay? You're brave. Her heart pounded, but she typed one careful reply to a friend. I'm okay. It's bigger than me now. That night at home, Isaiah sat on the couch, soccer cleats still on, watching cartoons. When Zuri kissed his forehead, he asked, Did you win today? She paused, then smiled. We're winning, Isaiah, bit by bit. Her mom, folding laundry nearby, nodded. The truth is loud, baby. It'll keep shouting until people listen. Zuri sat at the kitchen table later, opening her laptop. She reread the article, her name absent but her fingerprints everywhere. She thought of her first day, the weight of silence pressing down, and she thought of today, an office finally speaking freely. She closed her notebook with a quiet satisfaction. This is what justice looks like in motion, she wrote before bed. The next morning, Kincaid's office was still empty, but this time, someone had taped a sticky note to the door. In neat handwriting it read, Closed for renovation, of conscience. Laughter broke out when people saw it. Even the HR rep cracked a smile before peeling it down. Zuri didn't know what the future held, whether the company would survive, whether she'd stay, whether more battles loomed. But she knew one thing for certain. They were no longer afraid. And that, she realized, was the first victory. By midweek, the story had spread beyond the local business journal. National outlets picked it up, reprinting the same damning headline, State probes wage theft at Kincaid and Company. The articles mentioned unpaid interns, the inspectors' raids, and a culture described by insiders as toxic and dismissive. Zuri read one on her phone at the front desk, heart thudding. She had hoped for accountability, but seeing it play out in headlines was dizzying. She wasn't named, but she recognized the quotes. That's my line about him saying, people like you. Luis sauntered over with his usual grin. Congrats, Harris, you're famous. Zuri shot him a look. Anonymous famous, maybe. Doesn't matter. Your fingerprints are all over this. He lowered his voice. And people are finally listening. The office buzzed like a shaken beehive. Calls from clients poured in, demanding explanations. HR issued another memo. We remain committed to fairness and transparency during this process. But no one believed the corporate fluff. Priya dropped into the chair beside Zuri. You see this? She showed her phone. A trending hashtag, #PayUpKincaid. Tweets from former interns poured in. Stories of unpaid hours, disrespect, gaslighting. Some even uploaded screenshots of emails that looked just like Zuri's folder. This is bigger than us, Priya whispered, awe in her voice. This is a movement. Zuri scrolled through post after post, her chest tight. It was like a dam had burst. People who'd been silent for years were finally shouting. That afternoon, a reporter called the office again, this time asking for interviews with current employees. HR scrambled, telling staff to direct all media inquiries to corporate, but whispers traveled fast. Some people had already spoken off the record. In the break room, Luis leaned close. You should talk. You started this. Zuri shook her head. I'm not ready to be a headline. Right now, I'm safe because I'm anonymous. If I step forward, retaliation, lawsuits, everything. Priya touched her arm. Then don't rush. Let the movement speak for you. You've already lit the fire. Zuri exhaled. She wanted justice, not fame. Still, part of her wondered. Maybe her voice could help others find theirs. At home that night, her mom scrolled the news on her tablet, frowning. These reporters keep quoting anonymous sources, but they don't tell the whole story. If someone credible came forward… Zuri stirred her tea. I know. But what if that someone is me? Her mom set the tablet down. Baby, you have to decide if your peace is worth more than your power. You've already made them pay attention. Don't lose yourself trying to give them everything. Isaiah, listening from the couch, piped up innocently, "If you tell them the truth, maybe more people get their cleats." Zuri laughed softly, tears stinging her eyes. "Yeah, maybe, champ." Back at the office, cracks widened. Two managers resigned abruptly, citing personal reasons. Rumors said they didn't want their names tied to the fallout. Recruiters swarmed the staff, dangling opportunities. Even Priya admitted she was taking calls. Zuri felt torn. Part of her wanted to run too, to leave the mess behind, but another part of her wanted to stay, because leaving meant Dale Kincaid's legacy would outlast her voice. On Thursday, the inspectors returned again, this time carrying boxes. They loaded them with files, hard drives, and binders, while staff watched openly. The sight was surreal. Years of secrets packed into cardboard and wheeled out the door. Luis whispered, "That's the sound of his empire crumbling." Zuri shivered. And the sound of people finally being heard. That evening, Priya texted her, "Turn on Channel 7. Zuri flipped on the TV. The anchor's voice filled the room. The state's investigation into Kincaid and Company has revealed a pattern of unpaid internships and wage theft spanning multiple years. Former employees have begun speaking publicly, calling it systemic exploitation. The screen cut to a former intern, face blurred. "He told me experience was my paycheck, but rent doesn't take exposure." Then came another, and another. Zuri leaned forward, her pulse racing. She wasn't alone. She had never been alone. The next day, as she walked into the office, a stranger was waiting in the lobby. A woman in a navy suit, badge clipped to her lapel. She introduced herself softly. "Ms. Harris, I'm with the Attorney General's office. We'd like to speak with you if you're willing." Zuri froze, glancing around. Priya caught her eye from across the room, mouthing, "Do it." The woman's voice was calm. "You're not in trouble. We just want the truth, and we can protect you." Zuri's throat tightened. She thought of Isaiah's cleats, her mom's tired smile, the folder labeled receipts. She nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll talk." That night, she sat at her desk at home, files spread before her. Emails, timesheets, Slack messages, everything she had saved. It felt heavy, like holding the weight of an entire building in her hands. But she wasn't afraid anymore. She typed the first line of her statement. "On my first day, they told me my time had value. 2 weeks later, they said it didn't. This is my story." And for the first time, she believed it could change everything. The Attorney General's office scheduled the interview for Monday morning. Zuri barely slept the night before, her notes and screenshots neatly stacked in a folder on her desk. She kept checking on Isaiah, who slept sprawled across his bed, cleats tucked neatly under his chair. She envied the simplicity of his dreams. At dawn, her mom brewed strong coffee and sat across the table. "You sure about this, baby?" she asked. Zuri nodded, steady but nervous. "If I don't speak, someone else will. But I was there. I know the details. The inspectors can't build a case on whispers alone." Her mom reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Then say it loud, Zuri. Don't let him steal your voice the way he tried to steal your pay." The government office was colder than she expected. Fluorescent lights, beige walls, the faint hum of air conditioning. A woman named Ms. Alvarez, the investigator she had met in the lobby, guided her into a conference room. 2 others joined, laptops ready. "Thank you for coming in," Alvarez began, her tone professional but warm. "We want to understand exactly what happened. Start from the beginning." Zuri opened her folder, heart pounding. "My first day was April 3rd. They told me the rate was $15 an hour. I have the offer letter." She slid the paper across the table. 2 weeks later, when I asked for my check, Mr. Kincaid said the first period was unpaid probation. That wasn't in the contract. She pulled out Slack screenshots, showing Dale confirming her rate. Then her timesheets neatly logged. Then her notes. 108 hours worked. Statement about people like you. Request to surrender badge. The investigators leaned forward, taking notes rapidly. "Did he specify what he meant by people like you?" Alvarez asked carefully. Zuri swallowed. "He said it with a smile that wasn't kind. Like I should accept scraps. I knew exactly what he meant." Her voice wavered, but she steadied it. "I didn't leave. I called the number on the labor law poster. That's when the inspectors came. The interview lasted 2 hours. They asked about retaliation, about HR's role, about how other interns were treated. Zuri told them everything. refusing to downplay even the smallest slight. When it ended, Alvarez closed her laptop and met Zuri's eyes. "You've given us more than testimony. You've given us a roadmap. This will make a difference." Zuri exhaled slowly, relief washing over her. "So what happens now?" Alvarez's expression hardened. "Now we move fast. There's enough here to escalate from labor violations to systemic fraud, and if retaliation is proven..." She let the sentence hang. Zuri knew the meaning. Criminal charges weren't off the table. Back at the office, the fallout deepened. 2 news trucks were parked outside, cameras angled at the building. Staff hurried past them with heads down, but a few interns stopped to give statements. By lunch, the company's name was trending again. Inside, HR tried to hold another listening session, but it collapsed quickly under pointed questions. "Why didn't you stop him?" someone demanded. "How could this go on for years?" HR offered weak apologies. No one accepted them. Priya slipped into the seat beside Zuri afterward. "He's finished. You know that, right? It's only a matter of time." Zuri nodded, though part of her still couldn't believe it. For weeks, she had lived with the fear of his shadow. Now, the shadow was thinning, stretched too thin by the weight of truth. That evening, she met Luis and Priya at a cafe down the street. They huddled over steaming mugs, whispering like conspirators. "You realize," Luis said, "if this becomes a landmark case, it could change everything for interns everywhere. Paid internships, stronger oversight, real accountability." Priya leaned in. "And it started with you refusing to hand over your badge." Zuri shook her head. "It started with all of us. If I had stood alone, he would have buried me, but you stood too. And the inspectors listened. That's how change happens." Still, she felt the weight of their words. A landmark case, a movement. Her choice had become bigger than she ever imagined. On Wednesday, the Attorney General held a press conference. Zuri watched from home, Isaiah on the couch beside her, eyes wide. "We are investigating Kincaid and Coney for widespread wage theft and labor violations," the AG announced. "Evidence indicates a pattern of exploitation targeting interns and junior staff. We will pursue justice for every hour stolen and every worker disrespected." Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. The AG raised a hand. "Let me be clear. This office will not tolerate the theft of labor, no matter how powerful the employer claims to be." Isaiah turned to Zuri, grinning. "Mom, that's about you." Zuri hugged him tight, tears spilling. "It's about all of us, baby." The next day, she walked into the office to find Dale's nameplate gone from the door. The blinds were still drawn, but the desk inside was empty. A rumor circulated that he had been escorted out the previous night. A sticky note reappeared on the door, this one in bold marker. "Justice works overtime." The office erupted in laughter. Even HR didn't take it down. Zuri sat at her desk, the weight in her chest lifting. She opened her notebook one last time and wrote, "The fight isn't over, but we've already won the first round." That evening, as she tucked Isaiah into bed, he asked softly, "Does this mean you're the boss now?" Zuri laughed through tears. "No, baby. It just means no one gets to be a boss like him again." And as she turned off the light, she realized that was enough. For now. By Friday morning, Dale Kincaid's name was plastered across every major news outlet in the city. Headlines screamed, "CEO under fire for wage theft allegations." Photos of him leaving the building the night before, his suit rumpled, his face pale under the glow of camera flashes, spread like wildfire on social media. Zuri scrolled through the coverage at her desk, heart pounding. She had expected fallout, but not this fast. Comment sections were ruthless. "Another greedy exec caught." Imagine thinking exposure pays rent. "Lock him out the way he locked out paychecks." Luis wheeled over, his grin uncontainable. "He's toast. Twitter's roasting him alive. There's even a meme of him holding an empty wallet with the caption, 'Exposure is currency.'" Priya leaned against Zuri's desk, shaking her head. "I almost feel sorry for him." Luis snorted. "Don't. He built this on exploitation. Karma just sent him the invoice." By mid-afternoon, word spread that Kincaid had officially resigned. HR circulated a stiff email. "Effective immediately, Dale Kincaid has stepped down as CEO. We remain committed to supporting our employees during this transition." There was no thank you, no farewell, no gold watch, just an unceremonious ending to a man who had spent years insisting he was irreplaceable. The office erupted, not in cheers, but in a wave of relief. Shoulders unhunched, laughter bubbled freely. For the first time, people looked each other in the eye without fear of what he might overhear. Zuri sat quietly, taking it in. She hadn't celebrated yet. For her, this wasn't about schadenfreude. It was about justice finally catching up. The following week, the Attorney General announced charges: wage theft, falsification of records, and retaliatory practices. The words were heavy, formal, undeniable. Dale Kincaid would face court, not just headlines. When the news broke, Priya grabbed Zuri's hands. "Do you realize what this means? He's not just out, he's accountable. This is history." Zuri felt the words land deep. History. She had always thought of herself as a quiet worker, someone just trying to get by. Now, her refusal to surrender a badge had become a crack that toppled an empire. The press wanted more. Reporters camped outside the building, cameras ready. Some interns began speaking publicly, faces visible now, telling their stories. Unpaid overtime. Threatened with blacklisting. Dismissed with "people like you." Each story added weight, stacking like bricks until the wall could no longer hold. Zuri stayed anonymous, but the pull to step forward grew stronger. She thought of the others who had left in silence, who might never see justice unless someone stood tall. That evening, she sat with her mom at the kitchen table. "They want me to speak," Zuri admitted softly, "not just to the investigators, to the press, to the public." Her mom studied her carefully. "Do you want to?" Zuri hesitated. "Part of me does, because this isn't just my story. It's hundreds of us, maybe thousands. But another part of me is scared. Once my name is out there, I can't take it back." Her mom reached across, gripping her hand. "Baby, power always asks for something in return. You already gave them your courage. If you choose to give them your name, make sure it's because you want to, not because you feel forced." Zuri nodded slowly. Her mom's words steadied her. At the office, HR tried desperately to restore order. They scheduled workshops on workplace ethics, offered pizza lunches, even hired a consulting firm to rebuild trust. But staff weren't interested in band-aids. They wanted systemic change. Priya spoke up in a meeting. "We don't need pizza. We need a guarantee this will never happen again." Others chimed in, emboldened. "Clear contracts. Transparent pay. Actual respect." Zuri watched, pride swelling. She hadn't just sparked accountability. She had helped ignite a culture of speaking up. Meanwhile, outside the office, the movement grew. Hashtags trended daily. Lawmakers began referencing the case in debates about labor protections. College career centers started warning students about exploitative internships. Luis forwarded Zuri a tweet from a state senator. "Thanks to brave workers who spoke up, we're considering new legislation to end unpaid internships. Dignity has no probation period." Zuri stared at the words, stunned. Her small act, her refusal to shrink, was echoing all the way to the State House. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Zuri and Isaiah walked home together, his cleats thumping against his backpack. "Mom," he asked, looking up at her, "are you a hero now?" She laughed softly. "No, baby. I'm just someone who didn't stay quiet." Isaiah considered this, nodding. "That sounds like a hero to me." Zuri's throat tightened. She hugged him close as they crossed the street, the glow of shop windows reflecting on the pavement. For the first time, she let herself believe it, not that she was a hero, but that her voice had mattered. Back at home, she opened her notebook, writing in neat letters. "Justice isn't loud all at once. It's steady, like footsteps, and we're still walking." She closed it with a quiet certainty. The fight wasn't finished, but Dale Kincaid's reign was. And the path ahead belonged to people like her. For weeks, Zuri kept her head down, watching as the storm around Kincaid and Company grew louder. Former interns continued stepping forward, giving interviews, sharing receipts. News anchors debated whether unpaid internships should be banned altogether. Lawmakers used words like systemic exploitation and modern wage theft. Through it all, Zuri stayed anonymous. She thought anonymity would shield her, but it also left her restless. Each headline, each broadcast, she wondered, would this story be stronger if my name was attached? One Thursday evening, her phone buzzed. A reporter she vaguely knew from college, Camille Jenkins, had left a voicemail. "Zuri, I've been covering the Kincaid case. Off the record, I know you were part of this. Your story could change everything. If you're ready, I want to help you tell it your way." Zuri listened twice, her chest tight. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she called her mom. "Baby," her mom said gently, "you've already put truth into motion. The question is, do you want your face to stand beside it?" Zuri stared at Isaiah across the room, practicing dribbling with his new cleats, his laughter filling the apartment. She whispered, "Maybe it's time." The next morning, she met Camille at a quiet cafe. The reporter arrived with a leather notebook and a patient smile. "This is your story?" Camille said. "Not mine. You set the terms, you decide what to share." Zuri sipped her tea, gathering courage. "Then I want people to understand it wasn't just me, it was everyone. I just happened to say no first." Camille leaned forward. "That's exactly what people need to hear." For 2 hours, Zuri spoke. She described her first day, her excitement, the promise of $15 an hour. She described the crushing moment Dale dismissed her paycheck as probation and the sting of his words, "People like you." She described saving receipts, dialing the hotline, watching inspectors walk in. Camille listened without interrupting, scribbling notes. Finally, she asked, "Do you want to go on record with your name?" Zuri inhaled slowly, then nodded. "Yes, no more hiding." The article dropped on Sunday morning. She said no, how one young worker sparked a wage theft reckoning. Beneath the headline was her photo, simple and unfiltered. Zuri at the cafe, eyes steady, expression calm. The piece was raw, detailed, and damning. It told the story from her perspective, weaving in other interns' voices, showing the pattern of exploitation. It ended with her quote, "I wasn't brave, I was tired. And sometimes tired people change the world because silence is heavier than fear." Within hours, it trended. Hashtags shifted. Zuri said, "No. Pay up Kincaid. Justice for interns." Back at the office Monday morning, whispers followed her. Some coworkers clapped her on the back quietly. Others just smiled with a respect that hadn't been there before. Priya hugged her fiercely. "You did it. You're the face now." Luis grinned. "Careful, Harris. Heroes don't get coffee breaks." Zuri laughed nervously, overwhelmed. She hadn't wanted hero status, but if her story gave others strength, maybe it was worth the spotlight. Outside, the story snowballed. National TV invited her for interviews. Labor rights groups asked her to speak at rallies. Universities called, wanting her to address students. At first, she said no. The idea of standing on a stage terrified her. But Priya pressed gently. "You don't have to be perfect. Just be you. That's what people are responding to." Her mom agreed. "Baby, when you speak, you're not just telling your story. You're giving people permission to tell theirs." So she said yes. Her first rally was in a city park, a crowd of students, workers, and union members waving signs. "Dignity isn't optional. Exposure won't pay rent." When she stepped up to the mic, her knees trembled. But then she saw Isaiah in the front row, holding a homemade sign that read, "My sister is my hero." The words spilled out. "I was told my pay didn't matter, that I should be grateful for experience. But bills don't take gratitude. Rent doesn't take exposure. We are worth more. And if one young intern can say no, then all of us can say no. Together, we can make sure no one steals our labor again." The crowd erupted. Zuri's voice shook, but she spoke through it, her words landing heavier than she ever imagined. That night, back home, Isaiah hugged her tight. "You sounded like one of those superheroes on TV." Zuri smiled, exhausted but proud. "I'm no superhero, champ. I'm just your sister." But in her notebook later, she wrote, "Maybe being a sister is exactly what made me strong enough to say no." The next morning, lawmakers announced a proposal, the Fair Internships Act, aimed at banning unpaid internships in the state. Reporters credited the courage of workers like Zuri Harris. She stared at the headline, her name etched into a movement. Fear still lingered, but alongside it grew something steadier, purpose. The story wasn't over, but for the first time she knew exactly where it was headed. By the end of the week, Zuri's name was everywhere. TV anchors introduced her as the young woman who said no. Podcasts dissected her story. College students shared clips of her speech with captions like, "This is what courage looks like." But with attention came backlash. On Tuesday morning, her phone buzzed with a notification. A comment under the article read, "She just wants fame." Another entitled kid who doesn't understand real work. Another said, "If she didn't like it, she should have quit. No one forced her to stay." Zuri's chest tightened. She hadn't asked for fame. She hadn't asked to be a symbol. She had only asked to be paid for the hours she worked. She shut her phone off and stared at her desk. Priya noticed immediately. What happened? Zuri hesitated. People online. They're saying I'm just chasing clout. Priya rolled her eyes. Of course they are. That's what happens when you tell the truth. They try to flip the script. Don't let them. Luis leaned over from his desk. Ignore the trolls, Harris. If they're mad, it means you're making noise. Zuri forced a smile, but inside the words lingered. That evening at home, she confessed her fears to her mom. What if they're right? What if I'm making this about me? Her mom set down her cup of tea, eyes steady. Baby, did you start this because you wanted cameras? No. Did you call that hotline because you wanted headlines? No, Zuri whispered. Then don't let strangers who don't know your name tell you who you are. You started this to get your check, and you ended up opening doors for others. That's not selfish. That's strength. Zuri breathed deeply. Her mom's words steadied her. But the doubt still pricked, sharp and insistent. The next day, Camille, the reporter who had written her profile, called. Zuri, you're trending again, this time because of the trolls. I want to do a follow-up. Not to defend you, but to show the full picture. To remind people you're not just a headline, you're a person. Zuri hesitated, then agreed. She had learned that silence only gave others power to define her. The article appeared under the headline, Beyond the Headlines, The Real Zuri Harris. It painted her not as a flawless hero, but as a young woman supporting her family, juggling school applications, buying her brother cleats, and demanding her worth. It ended with her mom's quote, She didn't want to fight, she wanted her paycheck. The fight came to her. The piece went viral. This time the comments were different. She reminds me of my daughter. I wish I had her courage when I was her age. Protect Zuri at all costs. Zuri exhaled, relief flooding her. At the office, things shifted again. With Dale gone, leadership scrambled. HR announced a transition team to keep projects moving, but employees weren't focused on clients. They were focused on change. In a staff meeting, Priya raised her hand. What about back pay for all the former interns? Murmurs of agreement filled the room. HR stammered. We're reviewing options. Luis shot Zuri a look. We're not letting this die, right? Zuri nodded firmly. No, everyone deserves what they're owed. Her words carried weight now. People listened when she spoke. She hadn't asked for that authority, but it was hers. Outside the company, the Fair Internships Act gained momentum. Lawmakers cited Zuri's story in speeches. Labor groups rallied under her quotes. A petition calling for federal legislation hit 500,000 signatures. One night, Priya texted her a video from the State House. A senator holding up the newspaper with Zuri's face on it. If this young woman can demand fairness, so can we. Zuri watched the clip 3 times, tears brimming. She never imagined her fight would echo in government halls. But the backlash didn't stop. Dale's allies spoke out, calling him a visionary misunderstood. Anonymous blogs accused Zuri of exaggeration. One headline sneered, intern or instigator. It stung. But each time doubt crept in, she thought of Alina, the shy intern who had whispered, I thought I was the only one. She thought of the dozens of stories that poured in after hers. She thought of Isaiah's proud little sign at the rally, My sister is my hero, and she reminded herself, this wasn't just her fight anymore. One evening, after a long day, she sat with Isaiah on the porch. Fireflies blinked in the warm summer air. Mom says you're tired, Isaiah said softly. Are you gonna stop? Zuri smiled faintly. Sometimes I want to. But if I stop, what happens to everyone else who's still waiting for their paycheck? Isaiah thought about that, then nodded. Then don't stop, but take breaks. Even superheroes rest. Zuri laughed, hugging him close. Deal! That night, she opened her notebook and wrote, Being heard is louder than being liked, and I'd rather be heard. The trolls would keep barking, but so would the truth. And she knew which sound lasted longer. The following week, Zuri found herself standing not in an office, not in a courtroom, but on the steps of City Hall. The plaza below overflowed with people. Students holding hand-painted signs, union workers in bright shirts, mothers with strollers, even retirees leaning on canes. The banners were loud, Pay us back. Dignity isn't optional. Zuri said no. She hadn't asked for this, but the movement had grown around her like a tide. When the organizers handed her the microphone, her palms trembled. But then she saw Isaiah in the crowd, waving his little sign again. She breathed deep and spoke. "I didn't plan to be here. I didn't want to be here. I just wanted my paycheck. But when I said no, I realized I wasn't alone. Every one of you has been told to stay quiet, to be grateful, to work for exposure. And today, together, we're saying no. We're saying enough." The roar from the crowd nearly lifted her off her feet. The rally made headlines. News outlets framed it as a turning point for labor rights. Commentators debated whether internships as a practice were sustainable anymore. The Fair Internships Act gained co-sponsors in the legislature, but with attention came new weight. That night, Camille called. "Zuri, you're becoming the face of this movement. That's power, but it's also pressure. Are you ready for that?" Zuri rubbed her temples. "I don't know. I'm just one person." Camille's voice softened. "Movements need faces, but they're built on thousands of voices. You don't have to carry it alone. Just keep telling your truth." Zuri nodded, grateful. At the office, change accelerated. HR held workshops on wage compliance, plastering posters about employee rights on every wall. It felt performative, but at least the words were visible now. One afternoon, Alina approached Zuri shyly. "Because of you, I filed a claim too. I thought they'd ignore me, but the inspectors actually listened." Zuri hugged her. "That's your courage, Alina, not mine." But inside, she felt pride. The ripple effect was real. Outside, other companies began facing scrutiny. Former interns at rival firms spoke up, citing Zuri's story as inspiration. Headlines multiplied. Intern revolt. The cost of exposure. Hashtags trended daily. Louise slid into her DMs one night with a meme, a cartoon intern holding a giant paycheck like a trophy, captioned, "Thanks, Zuri." She laughed harder than she had in weeks. Sometimes humor was the only thing that kept the weight from crushing her. Still, not everyone cheered. Anonymous emails landed in her inbox. "You're ruining opportunities for students. No one will hire you after this." One even sneered, "Enjoy your 15 minutes, little girl." The words stung. But she reminded herself of her mom's mantra, "Truth outlives noise." When she told Priya, her friend shook her head. "They're scared. Scared people insult instead of listening." Zuri wrote the words in her notebook. Scared people insult. Brave people change. The strain showed at home, too. One evening, Isaiah asked quietly, "Why do people online say mean things about you?" Zuri pulled him close. "Because sometimes telling the truth makes people uncomfortable, but that doesn't make it less true." He frowned, thinking. "Then keep telling it." She kissed his forehead. "I will." A week later, she received an invitation that startled her. The state legislature wanted her to testify at a hearing about the Fair Internships Act. Her first reaction was panic. Public speaking at a rally was one thing. Speaking in front of lawmakers felt impossibly heavy. But Priya reminded her, "You've already done harder things. You faced Dale. You faced trolls. This is just another room." Her mom added gently, "Don't think of them as lawmakers. Think of them as people who need to hear your story." So she said, yes. The day of the hearing, she sat at a long table, microphones lined up, cameras flashed, lawmakers shuffled papers. She breathed deeply, clutching her prepared notes. When it was her turn, she leaned toward the mic. "My name is Zuri Harris. 2 months ago, I was told I didn't deserve a paycheck, that I should be grateful for exposure. But exposure doesn't pay bills. Exposure doesn't buy cleats for my little brother. And if I hadn't spoken up, I would have disappeared like so many others." She told them about her timesheets, about Dale's words, about the inspectors arriving. She ended simply, "Work has value, always, and dignity should never be optional." The room was silent for a beat. Then applause broke out. Unusual in such chambers, but unstoppable. That night, news channels replayed her testimony. Commentators called it the speech that sealed the bill's fate. The act now seemed destined to pass. Zuri sat on her couch, exhausted but glowing. Isaiah bounced beside her, chanting, "You did it! You did it!" Her mom hugged her tight. "Baby, you turned one stolen paycheck into a law. That's history." Zuri whispered, almost to herself, "History made by tired people who refuse to stay quiet." The morning after her testimony, Zuri woke to a flood of messages. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Friends from high school, distant cousins, even professors she'd never met but who had watched the hearing. One text stood out. "Your words moved me. I'm drafting amendments to expand protections. Thank you for your courage." It was from one of the lawmakers. Zuri stared at the screen, stunned. She had spoken from her heart, but now it was shaping law. At the office, the atmosphere had shifted yet again. Without Dale, leadership scrambled to rebrand. HR circulated glossy brochures about a new era of accountability. They brought in consultants to preach about culture change. But the real change came from below. Priya led a small group drafting demands: clear contracts, fair pay, retroactive compensation. If they want to rebuild trust, she said firmly, they'll have to earn it. Luis added with a grin, "No more pizza parties instead of paychecks." Zuri smiled, but fatigue pressed on her. Between work, interviews, and testimony, she felt stretched thin. She scribbled in her notebook, "Justice is heavy. How do you carry it without losing yourself?" That weekend, she tried to recharge. She took Isaiah to the park, watching him sprint across the grass in his cleats, laughter echoing. For a few hours, she let herself just be his sister, not a symbol, not a headline. Her mom sat beside her on the bench. "You look tired," she said softly. Zuri sighed. "I am. Everyone wants me to speak, to show up, to lead. But sometimes I just want to be Zuri, the girl who reads books at night and dreams about college." Her mom squeezed her hand. "Baby, you can be both. Heroes are still people. Don't let them forget that." On Monday, Camille reached out again. "Zuri, your testimony went viral, but so did the backlash. Some lobbyists are pushing against the bill. They're saying your case was an outlier." Zuri clenched her jaw. "An outlier? Do they think all those interns were lying?" "Exactly. Which is why your continued voice matters," Camille said gently, "but you don't have to carry it alone. Others are stepping up too." That comforted Zuri. She wasn't the only one anymore. The floodgates were open. At the legislature, the bill advanced out of committee. Headlines blared, "Fair Internships Act moves forward." Supporters rallied, chanting her name alongside slogans. But detractors grew louder too. Editorials warned it would kill opportunities. Commentators sneered on talk shows. Kids these days want pay without sacrifice. Zuri tried not to read them, but they seeped in. One night, scrolling too late, she stumbled on a clip of a pundit mocking her directly. "Zuri Harris? She's just another kid who didn't understand the grind." Her stomach dropped. She closed her laptop, tears stinging. Her mom found her on the couch, silent. "Don't listen to them," she said firmly. "They mocked Marcus Garvey. They mocked Rosa Parks. They mocked anyone who tried to change the rules. Mockery means you're shifting the ground." Zuri breathed deeply, letting the words settle. Mockery meant movement. Back at work, Priya noticed her exhaustion. "You don't have to go to every rally, you know. Take a break." Zuri shook her head. "What if I miss the moment? What if silence makes it weaker?" Luis leaned in, serious for once. "Movements aren't sprints, Harris. They're marathons. And marathons need water breaks." Zuri laughed softly. They were right. But balance felt impossible when history knocked daily. That Friday, she attended another rally, this one organized by students. The energy was different, younger, wilder. Signs waved with her quotes, chants rose like thunder. A student leader handed her the mic. "Zuri, say something." She looked out at the sea of faces, so eager, so ready. Her exhaustion lifted, just enough. "I'm tired," she admitted into the mic. The crowd hushed. "But that's okay, because tired people change the world too. We're tired of being unpaid, tired of being silenced, tired of being told we should be grateful for crumbs, and guess what? Tired doesn't mean weak. Tired means we're done waiting." The cheers shook the plaza. Zuri felt tears slip down her cheeks, but this time they were tears of release. That night, she wrote in her notebook, "I don't have to be endless. I just have to be honest." Her path was still unfolding, court cases pending, laws still debated, trolls still jeering. But she knew one thing. She had become more than an intern, more than a symbol. She was a voice, and voices once freed don't go back into silence. By the time summer deepened, Zuri's world no longer resembled the one she had known just months before. She was no longer the intern who didn't get paid. She was now the face of a movement. Morning shows invited her to speak. Podcasts requested interviews. Universities offered her honorary scholarships. Even labor leaders who had been fighting for decades reached out with gratitude. One morning, her inbox carried an invitation that made her jaw drop: a national labor summit in Washington, D.C. They wanted her as the keynote speaker. She stared at the email, hands trembling. Her mom looked over her shoulder. "Baby, this is big. It's too big," Zuri whispered. "I've never even been on a plane." Her mom smiled gently. "First time for everything, and maybe it's time the nation hears your voice the way we did." At work, the news spread quickly. Priya nearly screamed with excitement. "DC, Zuri, do you understand? This is history." Louis smirked. "Better get a new blazer, Harris. Nation's watching." Zuri laughed nervously. She wasn't sure she wanted the nation watching, but she also knew the weight of saying no. If she declined, would that silence ripple louder than her fear? So she said yes. The summit hall was enormous, chandeliers glinting above, rows of seats filled with activists, lawmakers, and workers from every corner of the country. Zuri sat backstage, palms damp, clutching her notebook. Camille, the reporter, was there too, offering encouragement. "Just remember, you're not here to impress. You're here to tell the truth. Truth got you this far. It'll carry you the rest of the way." Zuri nodded, inhaling deeply. When her name was called, the applause thundered. She walked to the podium, knees trembling but head high. "I was told my work had no value," she began, her voice carrying steady, "that I should be grateful for experience instead of pay. But gratitude doesn't buy groceries. Exposure doesn't keep the lights on, and silence doesn't create change." She paused, letting the words land. Faces in the crowd leaned forward, listening. "I thought I was one girl alone. But then I spoke, and others spoke too. We weren't alone. We were a chorus waiting to be heard. And now we're here, not just to demand paychecks, but to demand dignity. Always. Everywhere." The hall erupted, applause echoing like a wave. That night, footage of her speech aired on national news. Commentators called it a defining moment in the fight for labor rights. Social media exploded with clips, hashtags multiplying, but not all reactions were kind. Critics doubled down, accusing her of killing opportunity or being a political pawn. Opinion columns debated her every word. Zuri read some, then stopped. She remembered Luis's advice: trolls bark when the ground shifts. Instead, she focused on the messages that mattered, like the email from a single mother in Ohio. "Because of you, my daughter fought for her back pay, and she won." Zuri cried quietly, realizing the ripples were reaching farther than she could see. Back at the office, changes solidified. HR announced new contracts, strict compliance measures, and retroactive payments for past interns. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One afternoon, Alina approached Zuri with shining eyes. "I got my check. They actually paid me back." Zuri hugged her, overwhelmed. This was why she had fought. Not for fame, not for speeches, but for moments like this. Still, the weight of visibility pressed on her. At home, Isaiah clung to her tighter before bed. "You're gone a lot now," he whispered. Zuri's chest ached. "I know, champ, but everything I'm doing, it's for you. So kids like you don't grow up thinking their work doesn't matter." He nodded sleepily. "Just don't forget soccer practice Saturday." She laughed through tears. "Never." As summer waned, lawmakers announced the Fair Internships Act would come to a full vote in the fall. Analyst debates predicted it would pass, citing public pressure. Pressure fueled in large part by her story. Priya texted her late one night, "Do you realize? This law might have your fingerprints on it forever." Zuri stared at the message, her heart swelling with both pride and fear. Forever was a long time. She opened her notebook and wrote, "I never wanted forever. I just wanted fairness. But maybe fairness is forever if we fight for it." For the first time, she allowed herself to dream, not just of justice, but of her own future. College applications waited on her desk. Her story wasn't just about surviving Dale Kincaid anymore. It was about building something bigger, stronger, lasting. And as she drifted to sleep that night, she thought, maybe history doesn't ask for permission. Maybe it just finds you, and you decide whether to answer. By September, the Fair Internships Act had a date on the legislative calendar. In 3 weeks, lawmakers would vote. The buildup felt like the last minutes before a storm, charged, inevitable, impossible to ignore. For Zuri, the countdown seeped into every part of her life. Reporters still called daily, labor groups invited her to events, and law students wrote papers citing her case. She hadn't asked to be a symbol, but symbols don't get to rest. At the office, even without Dale, tension lingered. A new interim director tried to steady things, but employees were restless. Some felt hopeful, others bitter. During a staff meeting, one manager muttered, "Thanks to all this noise, clients are pulling out." Louis shot back, "Maybe clients don't like thieves." The room went silent, but no one disagreed. Zuri stayed quiet, taking notes in her ever-present notebook. She wasn't here to spar, she was here to witness. At home, she tried to be normal for Isaiah's sake. She cooked dinner, helped with homework, and cheered at soccer practice. But even there, whispers followed. Parents on the sidelines leaned over. "That's the girl from TV." Isaiah puffed his chest proudly. "That's my sister," he told anyone who would listen. Zuri smiled, but part of her worried. Fame had sharp edges and she didn't want him cut by them. The closer the vote drew, the harsher the opposition grew. Business lobbies poured money into ads claiming the bill would kill opportunities for students. Talk shows repeated the refrain, "If internships must be paid, fewer will exist." One night, Zuri sat with Camille, the reporter, at a quiet cafe. "They're trying to make it look like I ruined everything," she confessed, "like I took something away instead of fixing it." Camille shook her head. "Don't buy their spin. They're scared. You didn't ruin anything, you revealed it. And once people see the truth, they can't unsee it." Zuri scribbled the words into her notebook. Revealed, not ruined. Meanwhile, labor groups organized a march for the week before the vote. They wanted Zuri to speak again, this time in front of the state capitol. She hesitated. "What if I stumble? What if I let everyone down?" Priya reassured her. "Zuri, you could stand there in silence and the crowd would still roar. You've already given them a voice, just show up." Her mom agreed. "Baby, people don't need perfect, they need honest, and that's all you've ever been." The day of the march, thousands filled the streets. Signs waved above the crowd. "Work equals pay. Dignity for interns." Zuri said no, we say no. When she stepped to the microphone, her chest tightened. The Capitol dome loomed behind her, the crowd's chant echoing off its stone walls. She spoke slowly, deliberately. 3 months ago, I was an intern told my hours didn't matter. Today, I stand here because you proved they do. This bill isn't about politics. It's about the simple truth that work has value. Always. Her voice rose, steady and strong. If they vote yes, they're voting for fairness. If they vote no, they're voting for theft. And history will remember which side they chose. The crowd thundered, shaking the steps. That night, Zuri lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The roar of the crowd still rang in her ears. She wasn't sure if she had done enough or too much, but she knew one thing. Silence had never been safer. Speaking had been hard, but it was the only reason they were this close to change. Isaiah tiptoed into her room, clutching his blanket. "Couldn't sleep," he murmured. She pulled him onto the bed beside her. "Me neither." "Are they going to pass the law?" he asked. "I hope so," she whispered. "What if they don't?" Zuri thought for a moment. "Then we keep fighting, until they do." Isaiah nodded sleepily. "Then I'll fight too." Her heart swelled. "You already are, champ." The week before the vote, polls showed public support surging. Even some lawmakers who had wavered now promised to back the bill. But the opposition didn't stop. Ads ran non-stop. "This bill will destroy opportunities. Don't let radicals ruin internships." Zuri forced herself not to watch. Instead, she returned to her notebook. She wrote, "Let them shout. Truth doesn't need volume, it needs persistence." On the eve of the vote, the State House glowed against the night sky. Activists camped on the steps, candles flickering in the dark. Zuri stood among them, holding Isaiah's hand. Feeling the weight of history pressing close, she whispered to her mom, "Tomorrow everything could change." Her mom squeezed her shoulder. "Baby, it already has. Look around." And as Zuri gazed at the sea of candles, she realized it was true. The law might pass or fail, but the silence had been broken forever. The morning of the vote dawned crisp and cool, the kind of air that sharpened everything. The edges of buildings, the sound of footsteps, even the beat of Zuri's heart. She arrived at the State House with Priya and Luis by her side, her mom and Isaiah just a few steps behind. The steps were already packed with people, banners waving, chants rising. Inside, the marble corridors buzzed with reporters, aides, and lawmakers hurrying in pressed suits. Zuri felt small among the grandeur, yet every camera seemed to find her face. She straightened her shoulders. In the gallery above the chamber, she took her seat. From here, she could see the rows of desks, the lawmakers shuffling papers, whispering, adjusting microphones. The speaker called the session to order. The debate began. Supporters stood, voices strong. Unpaid labor is theft, plain and simple. This bill ends a practice that has gone on for too long. Opponents pushed back. This legislation will kill opportunity. Students will lose valuable experience. Businesses will suffer. Back and forth it went like waves colliding. Zuri scribbled notes, her hands trembling. She recognized the talking points, the same ones trolls had thrown at her online. But hearing them echo through this chamber made her chest tighten. At one point, a lawmaker held up her photo from the newspaper. This young woman represents thousands who have been exploited. Are we really going to tell her she doesn't matter? The gallery erupted in murmurs. Zuri's cheeks burned, but pride swelled inside her. As the hours passed, the air grew heavy with anticipation. Isaiah fidgeted beside his grandmother, whispering, "When do they vote?" "Soon," Zuri murmured, squeezing his hand. Finally, the speaker called for the roll. One by one, names were called, voices answering, "Yes," "No," "Yes." The gallery was silent except for the clerk's steady rhythm. Zuri's pulse thundered with each answer. Priya gripped her hand tight. Luis leaned forward, jaw clenched. Halfway through, the count was close. Too close. Her stomach twisted. Then came a shift. A moderate who had wavered before spoke into the mic. "Yes." Another followed. "Yes." The tide began to turn. When the final name was called, the clerk announced the tally. The bill passes. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the gallery erupted. Cheers, applause, chants filling the chamber until the speaker's gavel could barely be heard. Zuri stood frozen, tears spilling down her cheeks. Priya hugged her tight. "We did it!" Luis whooped so loud he nearly got shushed by security. Isaiah jumped to his feet, waving his homemade sign. "My sister is my hero." The cameras captured it, flashes exploding. Zuri pressed her hand to her chest, whispering, "We won." Outside, the steps became a celebration. Drums pounded, chants rose, strangers hugged each other, reporters swarmed, microphones thrust forward. "How do you feel, Zuri?" one asked. She wiped her tears, voice steady. "I feel like tired people changed the world today, and I feel like this is just the beginning." The crowd roared in response. That evening, back home, the family gathered in the living room. The news replayed the moment again and again. The tally announced, the gallery erupting, Isaiah's sign waving high. Commentators called it a landmark victory and the end of unpaid labor in this state. Zuri curled on the couch, exhausted but glowing. Her mom placed a blanket over her shoulders. "Baby, you turned one stolen paycheck into a law." Isaiah beamed. "Now everyone gets their cleats." Zuri laughed through tears. "Yes, champ, everyone gets their cleats." Later, alone in her room, she opened her notebook. Today, the silence ended. Today, the law changed. Today, I learned that even the smallest voice, when it refuses to be quiet, can echo in halls built to ignore it. She closed the book with a quiet certainty. The battle had been long, brutal, and exhausting. But for the first time, she allowed herself to rest, knowing history had turned, and her footsteps had helped push it forward. The morning after the vote felt surreal. Zuri woke to sunlight spilling across her bedroom and the faint sound of Isaiah humming in the kitchen. For a split second, she thought it was just another Saturday. No protests, no reporters, no bills waiting in chambers. Then her phone buzzed, and the flood returned. Messages from strangers filled her inbox. "You gave me courage. Because of you, I filed my claim. History will remember your name." Zuri stared at the screen, overwhelmed. She had fought for one paycheck. Now people treated her like she'd changed the world. She padded into the kitchen. Isaiah grinned, balancing a stack of pancakes. "Special breakfast for the hero." Zuri laughed, hugging him tight. "You're the real hero, champ. You kept me going." Their mom chuckled, pouring coffee. "Both of you are heroes. Now eat before the pancakes get cold." Later that morning, Camille called. "Zuri, congratulations again. But listen, this isn't the end. Journalists will keep calling. Law schools want you to speak. Nonprofits want you on panels. The world sees you as a leader now." Zuri's stomach fluttered. "I don't know if I'm ready for all that." Camille paused. "You weren't ready for any of this, and you still rose to it. Just remember, you get to choose what parts of this you say yes to. Don't let the world swallow you. Zuri scribbled in her notebook. Say yes with purpose, no with courage. At the office, the ripple effects were undeniable. Posters about wage compliance covered every wall. New contracts spelled out pay in bold letters. HR scheduled mandatory training sessions on workplace dignity. But the biggest change wasn't in the posters or policies. It was in the people. During a lunch break, Alina approached Zuri with tears in her eyes. I got my retroactive check, $2,000. I can finally pay off my tuition balance. Zuri hugged her, tears brimming. You earned every penny. Priya clapped her on the back. See what you started? You didn't just change the law, you changed lives. Luis added with a grin, and you made Dale Kincaid a cautionary tale. Every CEO's nightmare, the intern with receipts. They laughed, but the truth was sharp. Dale's name had become shorthand for greed. His downfall a warning in business schools and boardrooms. Still, not everything was easier. On social media, critics sneered, now no one will hire interns. She's ruined opportunities for the next generation. One commentator on TV dismissed her outright. This girl got lucky with a headline. She's not a leader, she's a flash in the pan. The words stung. That night, Zuri sat on the porch staring at the city lights. Her mom joined her. Hard day? She asked. Zuri nodded. Sometimes it feels like for every person who thanks me, 10 more want to tear me down. Her mom sipped her tea. Baby, you asked for fairness, not fame. Fame came anyway. Don't let it trick you into thinking you owe it anything. You did your part. The law is proof. Zuri breathed deep. Her mom was right. Fame was noise. Justice was substance. The following week, she received an unexpected letter. An invitation to apply for a full scholarship at a local university. The dean wrote personally, "We believe your leadership exemplifies the values we want in our students. We hope you'll consider continuing your journey here." Zuri read it 3 times, her hands shaking. College had always been a distant dream, something she thought would be buried under bills and responsibilities. Now it was within reach. She showed her mom, who teared up immediately. "Baby, this is your door opening." Isaiah cheered. "Yes, college Zuri, you'll be even more of a hero." Zuri laughed, hugging them both. "We'll see. For now, one step at a time." As fall settled in, her days filled with new balances, part-time work at the firm, community meetings, media requests. Some nights she collapsed into bed, bone-tired. But each time exhaustion threatened to drown her, she thought of the interns who had cashed their first real checks. She thought of Isaiah's cleats pounding on the soccer field. She thought of Alina's tuition finally paid. And she reminded herself, this is why. One evening, after a long day, she opened her notebook and wrote slowly, "Justice isn't a finish line. It's a rhythm. Work, rest, speak, listen. We don't stop because the law passed. We keep walking because someone else is still behind us, waiting for their turn." She closed the book, her resolve steady. The storm had passed, but its echoes would shape her forever. And though the weight was heavy, she knew now, she had the strength to carry it. The scholarship letter sat on Zuri's nightstand like a beacon. Every morning she woke, her eyes fell on it, and for a moment she allowed herself to imagine. Dorm rooms filled with books, lectures that stretched her mind, walking across a campus not as the girl who fought a CEO, but simply as a student. But life had other plans too. The movement she'd sparked wasn't slowing, it was spreading. Labor groups in other states called, hoping she'd speak at their rallies. A national newspaper ran an editorial titled, "From Intern to Icon, Why Zuri Harris Matters." Even international outlets reached out, connecting her story to global fights against exploitation. At breakfast one morning, Isaiah grinned across the table. "When you go to college, can I visit your dorm?" Zuri laughed. "If I have one, sure, but remember, I still have to apply." Her mom folded her newspaper, eyes soft. "Baby, you've already earned it. But don't forget, college isn't just about what the world wants from you. It's about what you want for yourself." Those words stuck. At the office, things looked different now. With Dale gone and leadership restructured, a cautious optimism grew. HR hosted listening circles, this time actually listening. Paychecks arrived on time. Interns signed contracts that spelled out every detail. One afternoon, Alina rushed to Zuri's desk, waving a copy of her first pay stub. "Look! Real money, on time!" Zuri grinned, hugging her. This is what it should have always been. Priya leaned over, smirking. So, when do we get your statue in the lobby? Zuri rolled her eyes, laughing. But deep down, she knew Priya was right about one thing. The culture had shifted. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough that people felt brave enough to speak. Still, the glare of attention was relentless. One evening, as she left work, a small group of protesters waited outside. Not supporters, but critics. Their signs read, "Keep internships free. Stop killing opportunity." A reporter shoved a mic in her face. "Zuri, how do you respond to accusations that you've destroyed chances for students?" Her chest tightened, but she steadied her voice. Opportunities built on theft aren't opportunities. They're traps, and students deserve better. The clip went viral, praised by many, mocked by others. But Zuri had learned something. Her words would always be twisted by someone. What mattered was staying true to the truth. That weekend, she met Camille at a cafe to catch up. Camille looked at her across the table. "You've become a national figure, Zuri, but I have to ask, what do you want next? Beyond all this?" Zuri hesitated. "I want to study. I want to build something lasting. I don't just want to be remembered for saying no. I want to be remembered for creating yes, for making doors where none existed." Camille's smile was proud. Then maybe college isn't just a dream anymore. It's the next fight. The following week, she attended a rally in another city, this time as an invited speaker. Thousands packed the square. She was nervous until she saw Isaiah holding up a new sign, "Work Etiapo's worth." When her turn came, she spoke from her heart. "They said I ruined opportunity. But opportunity without dignity isn't opportunity at all. We don't want crumbs. We want a seat at the table and a fair share on the plate." The crowd roared. On the way home, Priya nudged her. "You're getting better at this, almost like you're meant to do it." Zuri shook her head. "I'm not meant. I'm just willing. There's a difference." But in her notebook that night she wrote, "Willingness is sometimes all history needs." Back home, she found another letter waiting, a thank you note from a worker in another state. "Because of your courage, my company is finally reviewing its policies. I never thought things could change. You made me believe they could." Zuri folded the letter carefully and tucked it into her notebook. It wasn't the loud cheers that kept her going. It was quiet words like these. As autumn leaves began to fall, the campus scholarship committee called to confirm her acceptance. Zuri would start in the spring. She hung up the phone in disbelief, tears streaming. Her mom hugged her tight. "Baby, you fought for justice. Now it's time to fight for yourself." Isaiah jumped around the room. "College Zuri! College Zuri!" She laughed through her tears, whispering, "One door closes, another opens." And this time, she was ready to walk through. Winter crept into the city slowly, frosting the edges of windows and dusting the sidewalks in pale silver. Zuri pulled her coat tighter as she walked home from work one evening, Isaiah skipping beside her. The world outside felt cold, but inside, her chest burned with something warmer. Anticipation. In just a few weeks, she would step onto a college campus as a student. The scholarship packet sat on her desk at home, filled with course listings, housing details, and orientation schedules. Every time she glanced at it, her heart fluttered. But excitement carried its twin. Doubt. Would she fit in? Would professors take her seriously or only see her as the girl from the headlines? Could she balance classes, family, and a movement that still demanded her voice? At dinner, her mom noticed her silence. "What's on your mind, baby?" Zuri toyed with her fork. "I'm nervous. What if I don't belong there? What if they only see me as a symbol, not as a student?" Her mom reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Symbols fade, but knowledge stays. You're not going there to prove yourself to anyone. You're going to grow, to learn, to make space for who you're becoming." Isaiah chimed in, mouthful of rice. "You'll be awesome, and I'll brag to all my friends that my sister's in college." Laughter bubbled around the table, easing the knot in her chest. At the office, people teased her affectionately. Priya waved a stack of textbooks she'd borrowed from her cousin. "Practice run, Harris. You better be ready for late-night study sessions." Luis leaned back in his chair. "Don't forget us when you're a big-shot professor someday." Zuri rolled her eyes, but inside, their faith steadied her. Meanwhile, the movement pressed on. The Fair Internships Act inspired copycat bills in neighboring states. Labor groups asked Zuri to speak at strategy meetings, this time not just as a symbol but as a consultant. One evening, she sat in a community center with activists twice her age. They sketched plans on whiteboards, discussing how to push for national reform. "Zuri," one organizer asked, "what would you tell interns who still feel powerless?" She thought for a moment. That power isn't about volume, it's about persistence. You don't have to shout the loudest, you just have to refuse to disappear. Heads nodded around the table. Walking home afterward, she felt something shift. She wasn't just reacting anymore. She was shaping. Still, the scrutiny followed her. Online critics claimed she was cashing in on fame. Others said she was too young to lead. One headline sneered, "Teen hero or token?" Zuri stared at it, anger prickling. Then she opened her notebook and wrote, "They don't decide my role. I do." The closer college came, the more her anxiety grew. She bought notebooks, pens, and a second-hand laptop. She studied the campus map until she could trace it in her sleep. Still, the unknown loomed. The night before orientation, she sat on her bed, staring at her packed bag. Her mom knocked gently. "You ready?" Zuri hesitated. "What if I'm not?" Her mom smiled. "Baby, readiness isn't about knowing everything. It's about stepping forward even when you don't, and you've been stepping forward your whole life." Zuri hugged her tightly, tears stinging her eyes. The next morning, she walked onto campus, heart pounding. Students streamed across the quad carrying books, laughing, hurrying to classes. For the first time, no one stared at her like a headline. She was just another freshman, clutching her schedule, searching for her classroom. Relief washed over her. In her first seminar, the professor introduced her simply. "Welcome everyone. Let's learn together." No cameras, no microphones, no hashtags, just pencils scratching paper and voices sharing ideas. Zuri breathed deeply. This was what she had fought for too, a chance to grow without apology. That evening, back at home, she wrote in her notebook, "Today I was not a symbol. I was a student, and that is enough." She closed the book, smiling. The movement would continue, the noise would rise and fall, but here, in this new chapter, she had found something precious. Space to be herself. The campus library smelled of old books and fresh ambition. Zuri sat at a wooden desk near the window, sunlight pooling across her notebook. For the first time in months, she wasn't scribbling testimony, headlines, or rally notes. She was taking class notes, lines of philosophy and history that stretched her mind in new ways. Around her, other students bent over laptops and papers. None of them looked at her like she was a symbol. Here, she was just Zuri. A student among students, a young woman piecing together her future one page at a time. Still, the echoes of her journey followed her. Posters on the student bulletin board advertised an upcoming panel, "Labor Rights in a New Era." Her name was listed among the speakers, alongside professors and union leaders. She smiled faintly. Somehow she belonged to both worlds now, the classroom and the cause. After class, she walked across the quad, phone buzzing in her pocket. It was a message from Camille. "The Federal Labor Committee wants your input on national legislation. They'll fly you to DC next month if you're willing." Zuri's steps slowed. Another door, another responsibility. She thought of her mom's words. Say yes with purpose, no with courage. That night at home, she sat with her mom and Isaiah. "They want me in DC again, this time for a federal bill." Isaiah's eyes widened. "National law? That's huge!" Her mom nodded. "Baby, you've already proven your voice matters. The question is, do you want this? Will it add to your life or take too much from it?" Zuri breathed deeply. "I want it. Not because of me, because if one state can change, maybe the country can too." Her mom smiled, pride shining. "Then go, but remember, you're more than a law, more than a headline. Don't lose Zuri in the fight." At the office, she visited briefly to see Priya and Luis. Both greeted her with grins. "College girl," Luis teased. "Already too smart for us?" Priya elbowed him. "Ignore him, we're proud. And hey, guess what? They finally set up a restitution fund for former interns. People are actually getting checks, with interest." Zuri's chest swelled. "That's incredible," Priya smirked. "That's you. Don't forget it." But Zuri shook her head. "That's us. None of this would have happened if we hadn't all refused to stay quiet." The following week, she attended the student panel. The auditorium filled with undergraduates, graduate students, professors, and even local reporters. When Zuri stepped to the podium, her palms sweated. But then she remembered Isaiah's sign. "My sister is my hero." She took a breath. I didn't start out trying to be a leader, she told the audience. I just wanted my paycheck. But silence was heavier than fear, so I spoke. And when I spoke, others did too. That's the lesson. Change doesn't begin with heroes. It begins with people refusing to disappear. The applause that followed wasn't thunderous like at rallies. It was warm, steady, human. And that, Zuri realized, was even better. Later that night, she walked through campus under the stars. Students laughed nearby, lights glowed in dorm windows, and for once she felt balance, a life where she could be both fighter and learner, sister and student. She sat on a bench, opening her notebook. I thought justice was a destination, but it's a rhythm. Fight, rest, speak, listen. Each step leads to the next. My step was saying no. Someone else's step will be saying yes to a future I can't yet see. That's how the road is built. She closed the book gently, smiling. Weeks later, the news came. Congress would indeed draft a federal bill inspired by her state's law. Reporters called it the Zuri effect. She laughed at the nickname, but inside she understood its weight. At home, Isaiah ran into her room, waving his soccer trophy. Look, Zuri, we won the championship. She hugged him tight, tears prickling. You did it, champ. You kept going. He grinned. Just like you. As the year turned, Zuri walked across campus with her backpack slung over one shoulder, her notebook tucked safely inside. Students around her hurried to classes, chasing their own dreams. She thought of the girl she had been, frustrated, dismissed, told her work had no value, and she thought of the woman she was becoming. Student, leader, sister, voice. The world had tried to silence her. Instead, she had helped it listen. And as she stepped into the lecture hall, she knew this wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of 1,000 others, all echoing the same truth. Work has value, always.